picked up his first loss early and has just been kind of cruising to the top ever since.
Costa's going to be getting things here with a Tropical Island and a Delver of Secrets. That's a dead giveaway of what he's playing, which is Rug Delver. And you have to imagine that Ian does know that. Here's a Lotus Petal.
It's actually not quite a dead giveaway. It could be Bug Delver.
I suppose that's true. I actually forgot about that.
But Ian Carle going to kick things off.
Normally with a Blood Moon here.
Yeah.
Hope Costa has a Daze or a Force Will. There is a Magus of the Moon. And that one's not as bad.
Not quite as bad, but still pretty bad news. It looks like Costa does have that Force of Will, so...
Oh no, is it the Spirit? Oh no, the Spirit Guide and the Blast?
Wow.
Oh boy, there's the Spirit Guide and the Pyro Blast from Ian. And now, Mr. Costa, you have a lot of red mana.
Yeah, just the shootout immediately.
And we'll trigger, see if Matt's really good at finding a bolt. Not yet.
Of course, as you mentioned, Magus of the Moon, not as bad as Blood Moon for Costa because of Lightning.
Yeah.
Prominent 4 of in Costa's deck. He can certainly cast it. It's pretty much the only card he can cast.
He actually has 4 Lightning Bolts and 2 Forked Bolts. So a lot of the times Rug Delver decks are on the 4-outer to get out of this situation for Magus of the Moon. Costa's actually on a 6-outer. Just taking a look at the top card here with Delver. And there's a Daze, so Delver's going to flip over. And now the race is certainly on.
Yep. Not exactly what he needs. Of course, that Magus of the Moon is turning that tropical island into actual mountains.
Yep.
So they cannot be used to pay for days. So again, it is literally Lightning Bolt, Fork Bolt, or Bust here for Costa.
Yeah, those are the spells that he can cast. Also, Force of Will if he does draw.
Sure.
one.
Yeah. Okay.
That's about it, though.
Sure. Yeah. Force of Will, a relevant spell here, and actually does have a game plan just the same. Can always just turn Insectile Aberration sideways.
Yeah, you saw Costa actually give some pause there, and I think the reason for that is because the thought process is probably, well, I could just leave this Insectile Aberration back, and then your Magus can't attack, but he is playing against a deck that has 8 blasts throughout the 75, so the chances of that working out well are pretty low, as Ian just does play a mountain who's going to attack here.
Okay. Yeah, he's going to swing, and it looks like there is some discussion about that City of Traders.
Ah, yes, how does City of Traders work with Magus of the Moon? It's a mountain.
Yep.
The other text doesn't matter. Here's a Painter's Servant.
So Painter's Servant is gonna stick here because of that Goblin Welder. Even if Costa did have a Force of Will to counter it, any artifact could come along and just bring it right back into play. So Ian has quite a bit of insurance here.
The big question now, of course, is what's the Painter's Servant naming? You have to imagine it will be blue in this particular matchup, and for this deck most times, and it is naming blue. Yep. And now Costa's going to put the brakes on.
Yeah. Interestingly, it is actually a decision for Ian to name blue, even though, of course, he does have main deck blasts. So the kind of the default is to name blue. If you name blue, it actually turns every card in Costa's hand into a blue card, which can be pitched to Force of Will.
Yep.
So Costa could then play Force of Will, pitching Misty Rainforest, for example.
Now Costa is sincerely under the gun because now a Grindstone has shown up. And not only does he want to get this Magus off of the table as he draws a Force of Will a turn too late, but if Ian draws a land or some way to produce mana, it's time to mill your entire deck.
And did he find it?
Attention Magic players.
He's going to slow roll us. Actually, he just didn't find it.
Yeah,
I think is the real answer.
And of course, it can be a land. It can be a Simian Spirit Guide as well. You know, whatever it takes. He might also be questioning, when do I want to activate this? If he does have a Simian Spirit Guide, I like activating it on Costa's upkeep as opposed to his own turn.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, now that, of course, that the Painter's Servant is in play, but if it is not in play when the Grindstone activation resolves, then Grindstone is just a millstone, more or less.
Yep.
So, yeah, if Costa does have Lightning Bolt, then he can bolt the Painter's Servant in response.
Costa will play a Volcanic Island Mountain. Drew a Daze for that turn.
And you know what? I said that, actually. If that did play out, Ian activates Grindstone, and in response, Costa bolts the Painter's Servant. Ian can actually use Welder to put the Grindstone into the graveyard and bring back Painter's Servant.
Yep. And you can tell Ian knows exactly how his deck works. He's going to weld out the Painter's Servant, weld in Lotus Petal.
Okay, and it looks like he is going to actually make that play.
Yeah, and there's an Ancient Tomb.
Finds a land anyway, so he didn't actually need the Petal.
Yeah. So what he's going to do now, he's going to activate Grindstone. And now with this on the stack, he says, I'm going to weld in my Painter's Servant, weld out my Grindstone, presumably. It could also be, of course, a Lotus Petal. Doesn't really matter. And then when Grindstone checks, Welder will have already welded in the Painter's Servant. It'll name a color, and that's just going to keep happening.
So yeah, Costa needs an answer to this, and does not have one, picks him up.
Ian Carle's going to win game number 1 here over Matt Costa. Red-White Painter up a game here over Rug Delver. And truthfully, this is a pretty tough matchup for Costa. this is a bad time for this pairing. There's not really a great time for this pairing, but this is basically him playing for top 8 here, and he's in a really rough matchup.
Yeah, well, the traditional, this is the mono red painter decks. Those are bad enough because they have blasts. This red-white version gets way worse because they actually have access to Rest in Peace on their sideboard.
Yeah, there's some other sweet tools here we'll take a look at in just a moment. We'll take a look at Costa sideboard first, and you have that in front of you.
Yeah, Costa sideboard contains 2 Submerge, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, 2 Sulfuric Vortex, 2 Rough and Tumble, 2 Pyroblast, 1 Spell Pierce, 1 Ancient Grudge, 1 Sulfur Elemental, 1 Croson Grip, and 1 Pithing Noodle. So not a lot of really high impact cards, basically just answers to In's combo. He's likely going to see him bringing in that 1 Pithing Needle, the 1 Croson Grip, the 1 Ancient Grudge. I'm not sure anything else is actually that exciting. Probably the Spell Pierce as well.
On the other side, this is where things get spicy. I always love looking at these sideboards because, sure, Pyrite Spellbomb, why wouldn't that be in there? There's also an Aethysworn Candace, a Thorn of Amethyst, a Trinosphere, a Manic Vandal, a Koth of the Hammer, a Red Elemental Blast, an Ensnaring Bridge, a Ratchet Bomb, 3 Fire Spouts, 2 Tormouth Scripts, and just a Singleton Rest in Peace. I'm checking to see if there are any in the main deck here.
I believe he has 2 Enlightened Tutors.
Yeah, okay, so a bit of a tutor engine.
Yeah, kind of 3 virtual Rest in Pieces.
I like Rest in Peace in this matchup, of course. Great against Tarmogoyf, great against some Mongoose. So you have to imagine that's going to come in. And Snaring Bridge is also pretty good against this deck. It's actually hard for him to get off of the board for the most part. Ratchet Bomb does a nice job against all of the threats that Costa can present. Firebolt does a nice job of killing Delver if he cares about that. I'm not entirely sure that he cares that much when he has so many blast effects, though.
Yeah. Now, the weird tension here, actually, for Ian is, we talked about Rest in Peace, how that's kind of an impact player against Rug. Traditionally, it's a card that's very good against Rug. Shuts down their Delvers and Tarmogoyfs.
Yep.
But it actually also shuts down Ian's Goblin Welders.
This is true.
So, yeah, there's a little bit of tension there. I'm not actually sure if I'm in which one I want in my deck after board. Goblin Welder, actually, it gets a lot better after board.
Welder's pretty good after board. Yeah, I think you might be able to, he does have 3 Goblin Welders, and he's got the 1 Rest in Peace and then 2 Enlightened Tutors. I think you might be able to have both of these cards in your deck. There is obviously a tension here, but, there will be some games where you just don't draw Rest in Peace, and you will draw Welder because you really can't control your draw step very much outside of the 3 copies of Sensei's Divining Top, and if you do draw an Enlightened Tutor. So you might be okay with having both of those because Rest in Peace is still quite good against this deck.
Sure. And, if Welder is in play and doing work, then you just tutor for something else.
Yeah. So I could definitely see that. At the end of the day, Ian has a lot of options available to him, and all of them are quite good against Costa. Yeah. For Costa, he needs to have a Force of Will for the Moon effect, which he did have, and it was Mags to the Moon, and he needs to be able to keep those things off the board, because if he's able to operate, with actual mana, I feel like he'll be able to win or at least put up a heck of a fight. But if a Blood Moon comes down, we're not playing Magic.
No, that is definitely a traditional weakness of these Delver decks. Costa's list no exception. The way that I have heard Delver described, I believe it was by Ben Weinberg who first said this to me. He handed me a Delver deck, and he said, here's how you play this deck. Don't let them do anything.
Sure.
If they do something, you're going to lose.
That's not something I'm interested in when I play a deck.
Yeah.
My opponent should be able to do stuff.
No, to be fair, Rug Delver is a very, very good deck at making sure that your opponent doesn't do anything.
This is true.
That's literally what every card in the deck does.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Costa, that's his plan. Unfortunately, these painter decks are actually very good at overcoming that plan. They have explosive turn 1 plays that can kind of punch through your defenses. They're wasteland proof to a certain extent because they have a lot of basic mountains. Although this particular list, a little less so because it is splashing for white.
Yeah, just 4 basic mountains here.
Yeah. And then, of course, they have the Blood Moon effects, things like that actually kind of just flip the script and, suddenly play your game against you. It's like, okay, you're going to keep me from doing anything? Here's a Blood Moon. Taste it.
Yeah, and it worked that game, that's for sure. Even though it was only Magus to the Moon, which again, Costa does have 6 outs to in 2 copies of Fork Bolt and 4 Lightning Bolts. So we'll see what Matt's able to put together this game, as that first one was pretty short. That's how Red White Painter likes it, of course, when they're playing against these Delver decks. And that's part of the reason the deck is in the format. They prey on all versions of Delver due to Blood Moon and Magus to the Moon. I remember last summer when we had Jonathan Suarez win a Legacy Open in Baltimore and Ruben Bressler getting 2nd in Cincinnati. We had this surge of painter decks. It was for, about 3 weeks, something like that. But, it made playing something like Esper Deathblade or Chartless Bug a bad idea.
Yeah.
Really bad idea. Now, that time is over with, and it's crazy to think that was about a year ago. It happened last summer, but, things got ugly for these 4-color, 3-color decks with greedy mana bases.
And I kind of wonder if we're kind of seeing that ebb and flow there, where actually we're right back where we started. I know Deathblade kind of saw another spike. Not just Rug, but Blue, White, Red, and Bug Delver. Been a lot of Delver decks doing a lot of damage. So, yeah, Blood Moon's a pretty good place to be right now, I think.
There are actually some decks that, it's really interesting how people can police decks like that. You know, you have Painter as a strategy, Burn as a strategy against the Delver deck's actually quite good. And we have a youngster who's 7-0 with Burn.
Yeah, 13-year-old Fire Slinger.
7-0.
A literal young pyromancer.
Yeah,
likely drawing into this topic.
Beat Dan Jordan last round to go 7-0. So Ian just going to play a plateau before passing and turn back over to Costa.
Yeah, not so explosive a start this game for Ian. Just a land, and not going to get to keep it.
Well, we don't think so. Going to float a little mana. Costa's going to go to his attack step, presumably. Make sure that mana does empty. For Matt, I think what's important here is he's going to play a Ponder. He needs to find a threat. You know, playing this, role that he's playing right now is all well and good, but he's got to get the beatdowns going.
Yeah, of course, the kind of the unspoken like step 2 of that plan. A, don't let them do anything. B, eventually kill them.
Yeah,
quickly if possible. So yeah, you do have to apply pressure at some point.
Let's see what Costa picks up. A copy of Delver.
Yeah, there's some pressure.
Yep.
And Ian takes a peek. I believe we have mana to spare there.
Now, Delver is interesting in this matchup because you can't imagine that it's going to do very much. I don't think a Delver draw is going to work the way that Costa wants it to, just because Ian has all the blast effects after sideboard. You know, if that's an Mongoose or a Tarmogoyf, it's a different story entirely. But Delver is fine or whatever, but it's not, all that exciting.
Yeah.
Here's an Ancient Tomb.
It is your least reliable threat. Do you think there's an argument for boarding it out, actually, for that reason?
I don't know if you can do that. I am open to, some outside-the-box thinking, of course. It's certainly not impossible, but I'm not sure if it's the best plan.
And so Ian's going to stick one piece of his combo, uncontested.
Also going to deploy the Delver. You saw him draw a Brainstorm for the turn. He knows the top card of his deck from that Ponder is a Volcanic Island. You have to imagine a Brainstorm is going to be cast here, if he can, at the end of turn, to set the Delver.
Yeah. Traditionally, of course, there was a lot of hype around how there was several years ago. There was the old AJ Soccer articles with like how to brainstorm, and he was just on a crusade almost. If you ever cast Brainstorm without a fetch land in play, you were doing it wrong and you got scolded for it.
Yep.
Delver of Secrets, I think, kind of changed that.
A touch.
Yeah.
A touch. It opens up your ability to cast Brainstorm as there's a Firebolt. Now that we've seen Firebolt, I can get behind your idea of sideboarding out Delver.
Yeah.
Because that means your opponent has bolts, and they have, maybe some crazy artifact way to make it stop from attacking, like a Ensnaring Bridge, and they have up to 8 blast effects. So the chances of this thing living are very small.
Sure. Yeah, and if you actually remove Delver from your deck, Firebolt does nothing.
Yeah.
So Costa just going to pass the turn, so no way to put some pressure on the board, likely just a handful of interaction of some flavor.
The question, of course, is who does this game kind of favor? If we're playing kind of this slow, grinded out affair, Ian's not underneath any pressure. He can probably sculpt a hand to be able to try to resolve a Blood Moon. Costa counters. Ian's found a Red Blast or a Pyroblast to win the war.
Yeah, I think it certainly favors Ian because he has lands in play. That's kind of the first war that gets fought against any Delver deck, is being able to keep your lands in play so that you can actually cast the things you draw.
Carle going to tap the Ancient Tomb for 2, take a little bit of damage. We'll see what 2-mana play is going to play here. It's a Painter Servant. That's a really good one.
There is Jan combo. Now, of course, Ian does not currently have the mana to activate Grindstone and just go for the win this turn. If he had a Stygian Spirit Guide in hand, that would do it. And of course, the Painter Servant also has to resolve and stay in play through an activation. So, kind of a tall order.
There's a Bolt, or excuse me, a Brainstorm. I think he's looking for a Bolt. He actually has one in his hand. So
we say Bolt and Daze, I think, are the pieces of interaction. Oh, actually, I believe there was a Force tucked in the back as well.
Costa's going to go 3 cards deeper. There's a Force. There's another Bolt. And now there's a Misty. Now, what's interesting here is that Costa opted not to play his land last turn to make his Brainstorm better. That might come back to hurt him a bit here, because there may be a chance that he wishes he had 2 bolts and access to be able to cast both of them, and he doesn't right now.
Well, of course, if Painter does stick, he can pitch that land to Force of Will.
That's true.
So may have the density that he needs.
Costa very quickly let that resolve.
So we do see multiple bolts there, so not actually in that much danger.
In response.
Okay.
Gonna sacrifice the Erd Mesa. Somebody gonna go for it here.
And this is in response to Misty, which would likely be fetching up a second red source. So if Ian was sandbagging Simian Spirit Guide, which I think is probably the most likely reason to be responding to a fetch land here.
Now, it looks like Matt's sacrifice is allowed to resolve here, too. Ian may just be playing around Stifle,
Okay,
for example. And Costa does have 4 of those this weekend, so.
Yeah, Stifle's another answer, actually, to the combo. Yep. You know, just for a turn, but
Yeah.
in certain games, that can be the turn that you need. Of course, here, Costa has no pressure going regardless, so Stifle wouldn't really be that significant.
So Matt going to shuffle Ian's deck here, and we'll see how he wants to proceed. Of course, if this, the Painter Servant plus Grindstone does work, yeah, it's lights out. And now here's a Bolt. So it's time to have a fight.
You know, or just let your painter die.
That would be a less interesting fight. There's a Red Blast. Of course, everything is blue right now, so that's why this is going to work. Okay, so that's going to counter that.
Yeah, Costa says that's okay. Has a backup Bolt and actually several ways to counter that.
It is a little risky here.
Yeah, this is a little ambitious. You're letting in. You're basically trying to gain 3 of In's mana by letting him draw a card. You're kind of getting 3 free Richard imports at the cost of giving him 1 extra peek at another Pyroblast or something along those lines. I like that In just making sure he gets that extra poke in.
Well, you gotta love no restand.
Yeah,
That's important.
it's like maybe I'll combo you out, but I'm not the kind of player who forgets to attack for 1. Attacking for 1, my second favorite thing in Magic.
Behind attacking for 2, I hope.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. We're moving in. Matt's got to take a look. You can tell he's very unfamiliar with how to, like, playing against this deck.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Matt's been around. He's played this format quite a bit. He has, of course, a Legacy Open win. I'm sure that he knows what this deck does broadly, but you know, Matt's cautious. He's just going to double check, like make absolutely sure I know what these cards do before I do anything. Now, having said that, he did actually just read a physical copy of a Tempest card.
Yep, that's true.
That can be a trap.
Things may not be how they appear.
Yes.
Well, the Daze is going to take care of the blast, so Costa is safe. You see a couple cards get turned over there in Spell Pierce and Wasteland. Now what Matt needs is a clock.
Yeah, and I think Matt's got to be pretty happy to actually get some value out of that Daze.
Yeah, it's pretty big. When your opponent has an Ancient Tomb in play, it's pretty big, actually.
Yeah, so Costa needs to stick Nimble Mongoose, Tarmogoyf. Those would be pretty big, burly brawlers. Delver would be okay, but I think he has to assume it would not last.
Ugh.
In needs to find a replacement Painter Servant, and in this case, Goblin Welder counts.
Yeah. I think Matt has to kill this, so there's a Bolt on the Welder. Yeah, that's going to get the thumbs up. Also, Costa, and I mentioned he needs to get a clock. Part of the reason he needs to get moving here is because all the cards you mentioned, there's also Blood Moon and Magus of the Moon.
Yeah.
Those are other things that Ian could draw here. So, the threats that he can draw are all quite good. And that's why Costa needs to find a Tarmogoyf, because if he can get Tarmogoyf in play, then, a card like Blood Moon may not matter as much, as Ian's going to cast Enlightened Tutor here.
So can find Blood Moon if that's what he wants. In addition to Blood Moon, of course, could get Rest in Peace. We did see him take a look at Costa's graveyard, so that may be something that's kind of on his radar. I think those are the most likely options, other than, of course, just going for the Painter Servant. I'm just going to do that.
Yeah, he's going to get ready to do this song and dance again. There's some spicy targets in here. Of course, Tops, Grindstone he's already got, 2 Bridges main deck, 2 copies of Lowest Petal, 4 Blood Moons, cards in the sideboard like a Pirate Spellbomb, this one Canonist. We have seen players use this strategy before. Jared Betcher top hitting the Season 1 Invitational in Charlotte with Red-White Painter. So, not the exact same build, but we have seen players use this deck to great effect.
If you're going to play a Blood Moon deck, is this the best Blood Moon deck right now, you think?
Some version of Painter is.
Okay.
I think. I know there are some players here playing Dragon Stompy, but I think that some version of Painter is the best Blood Moon deck.
And we see the Painter Servant that Carle fetched up. That's going to provide a target for that Force of Will.
Costa,
Says,
Force
sure.
Will does not work.
Deal.
And Ian says, I'm going to go for it. And Costa, do you have a 4th Bolt? You do not. Ian Carle is going to win this match over Matt Costa, 2-0. Red-White Painter taking down Rug Delver in what is a very, very difficult matchup, I believe, for Rug Delver.
Yeah, this is not a matchup that I'd actually ever seen play out. Just sat and watched 2 games of it. This matchup is brutal.
It seems very bad.
Like I knew on paper that it was bad. This might be Rug Delver's worst matchup.
It's possible. It's definitely possible. There are just so many threats that they present, especially when Costa doesn't have a clock. If Costa